Welcome to Leaders Path, leadership journeys of people within the IT and business change professions. Brought to you by Middleton's Assured Talent, IT leadership and business change recruitment specialists.
And welcome to the fifth episode of the Leaders Path podcast and video blog. This is brought to you by Middleton's Assured Talent, and we're basically looking to speak to leaders in the IT and business change field and understand how they got to where they were, and hopefully for them to share some great tidbits of advice and learnings that they've had along the way. So today we have Jason Stothard, and I guess, Jason, first question straight to you. When you meet people for the first time, you know, whether it's in a work sense or a social sense, what is it you say that you do? How do you describe what it is that you do?
Well, I do admit that I'm in IT.
Yeah.
Not a problem for me, but I tell them I'm not particularly technical, and I'm more in the management and project management side of it. Yeah.
And do you have a job title that you use, or is it, do you not pin yourself down too much by that?
Well, officially I'm a head of programs, e-commerce, so that pins me down quite tightly, I guess. But in general terms, I just say I'm in project management.
Yeah, makes sense. So it's always good to understand, you know, the career to this point. You know, can you provide that overview where you started, why you started in IT, and you know, and how you've got to where you are now?
Yeah, of course I can. I mean, I'm a bit of a veteran, so I'll try and take not too much of my time on this one. So I started in the mid-80s in IT. I actually trained as an accountant to start with.
Oh, really?
And I moved into IT. I stumbled into it by chance. So what was happening is we had a mainframe computer at the place that I worked, and one day this box turned up with a PC in it, one of the first PCs, like an Apricot XI dual floppy disk thing.
Right.
My age now, and they wanted somebody to set up and play with this newfangled gadget. So I guess I was probably, not that I want to stereotype people, I was the youngest in the office at the time, so the job fell to me. Let the new kid on the block try the IT.
Right.
And so I did, and never really looked back. So I had a good career there, computerising things, stock books onto spreadsheets and things like that, and really enjoyed it. So that's how I started in IT, and then over the years I've just really developed. I was quite fortunate in that my very first role as an IT manager was tender age of 22, so
right.
I got management quite early. I moved from the place where I started work to the Medical Protection Society, which is a professional indemnity organisation, in '94, doing finance-related projects. So that's where the accountancy and IT blended background came in quite nicely. And I did that for 5 years. They were relocating from London up to Leeds. And we had a good 5 years setting up all the systems from a finance point of view. And then in 1999, I actually got the head of IT job at the MPS.
All right, yeah.
I guess it was quite an immature organisation from an IT point of view. If you know the MPS, it's a Doctors for Doctors professional indemnity company. It's not an insurance company, it's limited by guarantee. It was quite dyed-in-the-wool sort of processes and procedures. And we spent the next 5 years really bringing them up to what we would say now is a reasonable level of IT. A desktop user, email accounts, connections to the internet, modern applications, office applications, all the stuff that you take for granted.
No, yeah.
Take it on, just the standard stuff. And then in 2004, after being there, so my career at the MPS was 10 years, I decided it was time for a change, and I moved into contracting.
Right.
And that was a conscious decision, essentially, to gain more experience. So work for different industries, different size companies, and basically get a good all-rounded mix of experience. So I went to contracting. My first contract was with a company that is now called Optima Legal Services.
Oh yeah, know of them. They're part of Capita, is that right? They were.
Yeah, correct. And over in Bradford, and the project was to actually separate them away from the parent company and for resale.
Right.
So they basically sell the company. So we did that. That took about a year. I like to think we did an okay job because a couple of us on that team were invited to go back to DLA Piper with the parent company and then do some work for them.
Okay.
So I spent another year again as a contractor setting up and running their global implementation team. So that was worldwide, excluding the USA, responsible for all infrastructure developments. Pretty good job, enjoyed that. Tried to get me to go permie. I did give it some good thought, but instead I moved to Gaz de France again as a contractor and spent 3 years there.
Right.
They're not a household name as much as EDF, Electricity de France, but they're a pretty big player. So I went to Gaz de France and ran a couple of big software development projects around the gas billing and gas demand forecasting. So that was another great name to have on the CV. And then for the next 5 years, so essentially from 2009 to 2014, I ran with another contractor, I ran a small business around infrastructure projects, virtualization for SMEs. It was a great experience, but unfortunately we couldn't make it pay as much as we wanted to do, so we shut the business down in 2014. And I went to where I am now, which is Premier Farnell, which is a global distributor of electronics. Started off as a project manager and then moved to program manager, and now I'm head of programs e-commerce on a permanent basis.
Excellent.
That's the potted history. It sounds like a quick way of going over 30 years, but that's what it is.
Yeah, does it feel quick?
Oh, well, it does. I mean, some years are quicker than others, but it is quite scary when you look back and you think of things that people take for granted nowadays.
Yeah.
And you think, well, actually, you were around and working in IT long before those things ever came about.
Yeah.
But it was nice to do that because you feel you've actually achieved something, whereas some of the guys coming into the marketplace now, it's a bit like when you tell your kids you only have 3 TV stations. And
yeah.
Like that. Now they've got everything on demand. I guess I was in it from a very early sort of point, which is fantastic.
And I was, when you were talking about that early point in your career, I was wondering, at that point, and particularly when, as you say, you sort of fell into it, was there a clear career future or path at that point? That, could you? Because as you say now, anyone getting into IT now can fairly easily get a rough idea of what their future can look like. Now, I do believe it'll change, and you can't fully predict. But you know what the path is really, or the options are. But I guess back then, what did you think the future might look like back then from a career?
That's a great question. And back at that time, you did wonder, because I think one of the monumental shifts that I saw really was obviously the early 90s and the sort of growth that the Microsoft organisation and the stuff that they brought. I mean, when I first started in IT, computer programmers used coding sheets, sent it for compilation. They went on a 5-week training course. It was a real skill that you had to learn. And then obviously with the likes of the Microsoft toolset and Visual Basic and things like that came in, you could almost become an armchair programmer. Yeah. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It made it accessible. But all of a sudden there was this boom, and particularly with the millennium as well, there was this boom and intensity around IT. And I think it was, at that point, you sort of think, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to be a programmer? Am I going to be in the operations side? It was all very much, emerging technology, and the Windows platform was, not as mature as it is now. And people used to use things like Novell, and I think you had a real sort of two-camp scenario. You still have a little bit of it nowadays, but not as much as before, where you have the pure technology guys, the ACE400s, the ICL mainframes, the COBOL programmers, who did it the old-fashioned way, and I use that word carefully, not to offend anybody. And then you have this emerging set where youngsters were getting involved. They could pick up Visual Basic, free, and try the hand, and you have this glut of programs coming on. And of course, everything became visual. it used to be dumb terminals, and you just had to worry about what you were entering on the screen. And then a whole new stuff came along where you were not only worried about the logic, but also how you presented it on the screen. Left mouse click, right mouse click, and all that kind of stuff. So I think it was certainly during the mid-90s, the thing, well, how's this all going to shake out?
Yeah.
And then 10 years later, after the millennium, and everything seemed to settle, and then you could see stuff emerging, the virtualization technologies, and obviously the internet getting established, and all the ways that people do business.
And I guess by that point, I mean, I came into IT recruitment in 2001, so just post-millennium bug. And I guess, and I think at the early point of my career, first couple of years, it was still very much COBOL kicks, mainframe type stuff. But I guess by that point, there was, there was clear structure around leadership within IT. People could see the jobs that they could aim for, and IT had a role at in the overall management of a business. But I imagine in the 90s and certainly in the 80s that wasn't the case. It was, as you said, the young guy in the office who looks like he knows what he's doing. He can look after the IT bit. But I guess that's something that has evolved quite a lot. But and the other bit of interest, you ran your own business for 5 years, and I think that was when we first met, when you were running having been a contractor for a while, how did that transition in, how did it feel different, or did it feel the same, from being a contractor to running, a business that you had to get customers and all that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a different sort of set of responsibilities. I think that it wasn't too dissimilar. I think obviously making the move from a permanent employee to a contractor is a massive step for some people. That uncertainty of income. Obviously, if they've got responsibilities at home, people think, well, it's a bit of a risky situation to be in. So some people shy away from it. I think once you've been a contractor for a number of years, and I guess as you know yourself, setting up your own business actually doesn't seem that daunting.
No.
You're used to it. You're used to the fact that you're out on your own. You don't get holiday pay. You don't get sick pay. All the frills that you get on a permanent employee, you don't get at all. So in that respect, it was quite straightforward. I guess the big difference was when you're a contractor, you tend to be out on your own. When you've got your own business with somebody else and you've got employees, there are other people that you
mouths to feed,
mouths to feed and look after. And you tend to put yourself last, of course, because what you want to do is keep everything ticking over. Pay the rent, pay the staff, put some money into marketing, and then if there's a little bit left for you, then you can take it. But so I guess that was the big difference. But the work is still the same. When you go to people's places, they want to see that you're going to do a job and be professional. And I think that certainly when you run a small business with a handful of people, you try even harder to do that.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. So looking back over your career, is there one particular move that you made that you think stands out as being the best, or that really cemented who I am and what I do now? Is there any particular that jumps out in that sense?
Yeah, I think it would definitely be moving into the contract market in 2004. Being somewhere I spent 8 years in my first job, 10 years in the second, so basically 18 years in two organisations, and then spent the next, 10 years or so working for about another 50 when you take into account the customers and the contracts, and really seeing everything. Yeah. So now, if I'd have stayed in permanent employment, I'm back in permanent employment now, and I love it. It's great. It suits me right now. It's perfect for me. But going out and getting those experiences, managing different stakeholders, different types of business. I mean, it's funny actually. My career is bookended at the moment because when I first started back in the mid-80s, the company that I worked for used to buy all its electronic components from Farnell.
Oh, is that right?
We used to write out POs. Goods used to come in. I remember hand typing stuff into the system, and Farnell was famous for about a 10-inch thick catalogue, with hundreds of thousands of products that buyers used to thumb through or use it to stand on to get books from up on high because the catalogues were that thick. And now that catalogue is pretty much redundant and it's replaced by a website, which accounts for 70-80% of the Farnell trade. And if you'd have said to me 30 years ago, that's how we'd be doing business now, I'd have chuckled and I thought, well, I can't see that. But that is the way it is.
Yeah.
And the business is, trying to adapt now to become that e-tailer, but based on a traditional supply chain model of, buying goods, putting them in a warehouse and shipping them out. It's interesting. So, being a contractor has allowed me to get all that experience.
Breadth of experience.
It's great.
Yeah, no, totally understand that. I mean, you've obviously hired people yourself, I imagine, both in your permanent jobs as contractors and in your own business. What have been the key signifiers, or are the key signifiers for you to spot talented people? What do you think? What do they demonstrate? What do they act like? What do you see that makes you think that's a talented person?
That's another great question, and it's always a difficult one, because obviously when you see somebody for the first time, they can be a little bit nervous, and obviously they want to make a good impression. But I tend to look for the positive and the enthusiastic person, the can do, and the people who plan to succeed rather than the ones that talk about failing. Now I know that's difficult to cover off in an interview, but you can kind of get a feel for somebody's personality.
Yeah.
Much of what we do in IT is common sense, and much of what we do, can be taught, learned on the job. So you don't necessarily need, the full set of academic qualifications to succeed in IT.
No.
I mean, it helps. Obviously, it helps these days, as a differentiator. But that's why I think the apprentice route can work well for people as well. Keen, in at the ground level, willing to learn, and almost, again, I use this with the right intentions, moldable. The person, you can make that person into what you want them to be and what you know that they would like to be. So definitely can do, positive, sell themselves well, personable, and obviously have an appetite to learn would be the first things I look at. And that's at the junior level. At an experienced level, it's almost like a flip. So there aren't many great project managers that are 22. And again, I mean that in all fairness. The best project managers have learned on the job. They've had one or two bad projects, they've had lots of good ones, they've had a mixed bag, and they've had different kinds of stakeholders. So if I'm looking for a decent PM, I tend to look, for somebody who's got 10 years on the CV, solid experience.
Yeah, they've got the war wins.
Not necessarily with one company, has been around a bit, and has, it's got a little, it's been in a couple of battles. Because I think that's what makes a good project manager.
Yeah. And it's with that maturity and experience, I guess when problems do occur, you'll live to fight another day. You can brush it off, go home, come back fresh the next day, rather than
It's absolutely right. It's it's never. I don't know many people. I can count them on one hand over working with thousands of people over the years. Who go to work to do a bad job. No. But everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
And I always use this term. If you can limit the blast radius of a mistake, then you do live to fight another day. And I think one of the things I like to see is people acknowledging that maybe they could have done something better, or maybe they would change it a different, tack next time, and are self-aware. Really.
Yeah.
The big thing for me, knowing that this time you could have done it better, but hey, you'll try better next time.
Yeah, I was reading quite a long but interesting article a couple of weeks ago, and Google set out to research what made a perfect team, and the size of the organisation and the level of data that they can record and the smart people they have in the organisation. They obviously thought that they could have a good stab at understanding what the difference is, and looking at all sorts of different elements over quite a period of time. It became apparent that actually the ability so ability measured in aptitude and intelligence and particular skill set ability wasn't correlated to the success of that team, whatever it was doing. The most common trait within the most successful teams was that the individuals within it felt, as they termed it, psychologically safe. And by that they meant that they felt secure enough that they could admit to their mistakes, but they could also put new ideas forward and feel that they weren't going to get ridiculed. So a lot of that was down to the leadership and the general attitude of people within the team. And I guess overriding all of that was that humility that you're talking about. That you don't think you don't think that you can't learn, or you don't, presume that you're the best that you can be, and you don't presume that of others. You allow other people to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. But that was the most common trait in the strongest teams, and I think you can measure, you can get a sense of humility, and you can get a sense of some of those things in an interview process. But it's hard, really, isn't it? You know what I mean? To really know what someone's going to be like in that sense. And again, it's often down to a gut feeling rather than something that's easy to measure. But no, it's interesting. So just a few more questions now. What advice would you give to your 25 or 30-year-old self? That sort of earlier point in your career.
Oh well, one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard was from a guy I worked with in Bradford 10, 12 years ago. And I always remember it because it just sat with me. It was absolutely right. It's very simple. We were having a bit of a panic, situation, and we were a bit stressed and worried. And he just said, go have a cup of tea. That's what you need to do. Just walk away and come back. Because if you don't, you will dig yourself deeper into a hole in your panic to get yourself out.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes, and it was a great bit of advice. When you're young and maybe a little bit impetuous, and you don't take that time, you can sometimes say things you might regret, do things you might regret. We've all hit reply in an email, and then thought later, well, perhaps if I'd have taken a bit more time, I would have answered in a different way.
Yeah. So
it is actually having that ability just to sit down, reflect, walk away, and come back to a problem. And I often think that it's then much easier to solve. So I think that's certainly one bit of good advice that I got that's sat with me over the years. Yeah,
I think it's a strength you can grow, isn't it? Because it's so easy to react sometimes, isn't it? And then both in our personal lives and our work lives sometimes.
Well, it is. And you know what? The problem is that once that's gone, once that email's been sent, in the heat of the moment, or something's been said, then it takes a lot longer to build back up the trust and build back up the relationship.
Yeah.
So, and you've just got to think that maybe you're dealing with somebody who's not quite as self-aware as you are, and and you've also got to think, well, what's caused that reaction, or why are they saying that, or and put yourself in their shoes and think about things from maybe they're having a bad day.
Yeah,
it's not personal. So certainly, I'd like to think over the last 20 years I've certainly become less impetuous and more mature and balanced. And I'm not sure whether that's a thing that comes with age, or whether you learn it through your interactions with other people, or a combination of the two. Probably a combination of the two.
Yeah, no, I like it. Go and have a cup of tea.
Go and have a cup of tea. Great advice.
What technology resource, or doesn't even have to be technology based, but productivity tool would you say is having the most kind of current positive impact on your working life? What's helping you the most?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's it's how you use the tools, I think. So
right.
It's not necessarily the tools, it's how you use the tools. So obviously, we've experimented with lots of things at Premier Farnell. Microsoft Project, SharePoint, Rational, which is a tool for storing user stories for specifying systems and the work that we do. And I think what we've come up with really is don't use these tools for using the tool's sake, but use them for how you want to use them. And I know that sounds, just like common sense, but sometimes people think, we've got to use this feature, we've got to use that feature. And we've come up with a really good way, and I think our PMO has to be congratulated, really, for creating a set of lightweight tools that allow us to do our job, but with the minimum of overhead. So yes, we have project plans. Yes, we have lots of documents in SharePoint, but it's the right weight of document, and it's the right weight of project plan. So our project plans, for even our most complicated projects, may only, be less than 100 lines.
Right.
Where, I've seen project plans with 3,000 lines for simple projects. So I think it's actually letting common sense prevail, using the tools, but using them appropriately, and letting the project manager do the job.
Yeah.
I have to say, I've been to places where they use Project Server, and you must do this and you must do this. You're taking 15 hours a week to manage Project Server.
Yeah.
Out of your 40-hour week when you could be managing projects. I think our overhead currently, we spend a couple of hours a week tops. So the rest of the time is all productive on projects.
Yeah. Well, that's a friend of mine who was talking about this the other day. They were looking at trying to find a new good project management tool, because they were just finding MS Project. Exactly as you say, it's like sort of one individual in the teams, a full day of work every week was just about updating and adjusting things on there that so that's ridiculous that level of resource is required just to keep the tool up to date. Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
Yeah, I would say stop looking at the tools and look at the one you're using and the way that you do it.
Yeah.
Because that's probably the root cause. We can all if I was being a cynic, I could say there's no great project management tool. They're all the same. So just pick one and use it how you want to use it.
Yeah.
And get out of what you need.
Yeah.
Don't let the tool drive you.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. And then the final question. I don't know whether you're a reader of leadership books, management books, or follow any podcasts or anything, but is there any particular ones that you'd recommend to aspiring leaders?
Well, it's probably the usual fare, really. I do follow Richard Branson. He's quite inspirational.
Yeah.
I guess 1 million people, probably 20 million people do. But, if I wanted to be, somebody that would in business, it would be him. Just because he has that, he's obviously a great businessman, but he's got that down to earth. He's just got a down to earth, nice guy. Cares about people, a people person.
Yeah, you don't feel he's trampled over anyone to get to where he is, do you?
Yeah. Whereas, the guy who's on The Apprentice, for all, he's a good businessman. What's his Sugar?
Sugar, yeah.
Sugar. I respect what he's done, but he always seems a bit brusque and not particularly person. So that's...
And actually, with him, I almost, he's created this caricature of himself that I actually think doesn't do business any good, or it's setting the wrong expectation of what a leader like that should be like. Do you know what I mean? No, I totally agree. And Richard Branson, I don't think any of us could not be, inspired by him, and actually one of the things that is great about him as well is how willing he is to share all his knowledge, and how. I don't doubt he's got a fairly substantial personal branding machine behind him, but I also think he's very, very active himself, and you do get to see the real him as well. But yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, no, Jason, that was really good. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's good just to hear different people's careers, how they got to where they are, and to share their knowledge. So thank you for that today. We'll sign off now and ready for look forward to the next episode in the coming weeks. Thanks now.